Welcome to the Children's Book Author Podcast. I'm your host, Eleanor Page. If you write for children, or it's always been your dream to, you're in the right place. As the children's book author, I'm on a quest to discover everything there is about writing, publishing, and marketing children's books, as well as how to supercharge my creativity, skyrocket my productivity, and absolutely everything else there is to know about how to be the best, so you can be too. Join me as I interview fabulous guests and become the children's book author. Welcome back to episode 2 of the Children's Book Author Podcast with me, your host, children's book author Eleanor Page. Today's interview is with writer Erin Everleigh. Erin writes for kids, so you're going to love her interview. And she talks about a lot of things because she's just amazing. But one of the things that really popped out about her interview is discovering your why. Why do you write for the particular audience that you write for? I never really sat and did this, and I think now, in retrospect, it's probably the very first thing I ought to have done. It's really common for children's book authors in particular to start writing children's books because they themselves have kids. Maybe that's you. I think it's really natural, and it's actually wonderful because, your children are there and they're so inspirational and you love to read with them. And then, you write something for them and they love what you've written and it's amazing. And that's often why you've written something. But as they grow older, I think it's really important, in order to keep that passion alive, to sit down, particularly if you continue writing children's books, and really work out why you write for that particular age group or that genre. For example, I write fantasy, and you don't really have to when you're a children's book author. I think it's one of the actual best parts of writing for children is you are allowed to kind of write across all genres, which is really quite special because I don't think, you can do that for adults, but it's a lot harder to market that when you write across a lot of genres for adults. But for kids, you can totally get away with that. And a lot of authors have really long and successful careers and write all sorts of things: non-fiction, fiction, novels, picture books. You can kind of really mix it up. It's one of the great things about writing for kids, I think. And knowing why you really want to write for children in particular is super helpful, particularly when you might want to, you come across a roadblock and you might think, oh, no one's reading my books, I'm going to quit, I'm not doing this anymore. When you've got a really strong why that goes beyond just writing for your own children, then that can really keep you going when you want to quit. And oh my gosh, I have wanted to quit so many times. In fact, I think all my family imaginarily slapped me several times when I've gone, that's it, this is too hard. And I didn't really have a why for a lot of those early years other than writing for my own children. So sit down and come up with your why. And in order to do that, ask yourself some really important questions like, why children? What makes you so passionate about them? Why the particular stories you tell are important to you. For me, I'm really big on developing intuition and self-knowing and self-trust and listening to your emotions and emotional intelligence. And having been a counsellor and psychologist for 20 years, coming up to 20 years before I retired from that profession, I often thought, gosh, if I'd spoken to this person back when they were a child, I could have helped them before they now got to, their 30s or 40s or 50s. And so I love planting those little ideas of self-love and friendships and valuing yourself and listening to yourself and trying to overcome your negative thoughts and just loving yourself and having fun and making joy and passion your priority in life. I love sharing those messages to a young audience because they're still developing. And, that's part of what fuels me, part of my why. Another part of your why might be when you were a child, did you, for example, what made you feel really happy and special and changed your life? Was it a particular type of book that you read? And what was it about that? So that might form part of your why. So all of this sort of exploration, even though it might take a bit of time, it's really useful to put that down on paper. And then once you have, put it up somewhere in your space so that when you have those moments where you're like, why am I doing this? I'm going to go off and write a thriller book for adults. You look up and remember, hey, this is why I write for kids. This is why it matters to me. And hey, who knows? Maybe your why, it'll show you that your why isn't strong enough and that you are supposed to write a thriller, right? And if that's the case, then isn't it fantastic to know that in advance rather than spend 10, 15 years developing a career as a children's book author when you really would have been the best thriller author there is? That's what I think anyway. So that's enough from me on this intro. Enjoy the interview with Erin Everleigh. I hope you gain a lot from it, and I'll see you on the next episode. Today, I've got another special guest that I'm interviewing, and I can't wait to get chatting and talking all things creative with Erin Everleigh, who is a mama, a dentist, that's why she has such good teeth, an author, founder of Wordsmithers Academy, and lifelong creative. Welcome to the show, Erin. It is such a treat to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This is great.
So tell us all a little bit about yourself, about your journey. Give us your bio in your words.
Okay, so kind of the last little part you said, I've always been a lifelong creative from as long as, even like thinking back to my youth, I always had kind of something that I wanted to do. But the, I guess, kind of ironic thing is that my education, like my formal education, took me in the opposite direction. Like people often think of themselves as like a right brain creative or a left brain academic or what have you. And a lot of my education was in the sciences. Even in high school, I did kind of all sciences. English, ironically, was also my I didn't do poorly in it, but it was the class that my marks were, let's say, not as good as the other ones there. And I guess, I realize now it's also a combination of, the encouragement that you're getting from your teachers and stuff like that at that time. But that's a whole other story. We don't need to get into that. But so my education took me more towards the sciences. And like you said, I'm a dentist. But the creative part of me it wouldn't stop. And I guess there's a quote that I came across that I mention all the time now since I came across it. I think it's been like over a year now. I was listening to one of Oprah's Super Soul Sunday conversations with Brene Brown. And she said, unused creativity is not benign. And I think that if you're a creative, I don't even need to explain to you what that means. It's like you just have this thing in your heart that you just can't not do it. And then when there's times that I haven't been able to have some sort of creative outlet, I literally feel I don't want to say sadness, but like I can feel it in me. Like I want it to come out. And so I've done so many things. I'm just trying to think back.
Tell us about them.
So I've
It's
had,
amazing.
I'm going to do like the more recent ones. So I have 3 girls. Right now they're ages 15, and I have also, they're all, I think I already said girls, yes. My oldest one's 15, and I have twins that are 13 and a half. So we went from 0 kids to 3 kids in 21 months. So it was a very busy time. I was working a lot of that time too. So I really needed something else, right? Like I needed something for myself. So I remember for my twins' second birthday party, I drew, which I didn't even know I knew how to do this. I drew I got like that huge big, like that paper, like, that's on the big roll. I can't think of what it's called now. But, and I drew life-size Sesame Street characters. and then painted them. And I think I still have them somewhere as like proof that I actually could do this. So like when the kids would go to sleep at night, I would then be drawing and painting, and like all around the party room for the party, I had I had Big Bird and Oscar and like Ernie and Bert and like just all of them. And so people are like, "What are you doing? Your kids are sleeping. Just like rest or whatever." But it's the being creative. That's my outlet, and that's kind of my rest. Like I said, if you're creative, you get it. Like I have no other way to really explain it. And then when my kids got a little bit older, I created something called Bibling, which it was basically like we'd always go for dinners and stuff like that, like out. And I had like I said, 3 kids really close in age, and like we don't always have enough of bibs or whatever. And so I created something. It was like this little necklace that had these cute little charms on it, like little clips that were like bedazzled and like beads and like all different themes that you could just clip on a napkin wherever you are. So like you just carry this little like jewelry thing around with you that the kids wanted to wear. And then you clip on the napkin to keep everything nice and clean. Like telling you, I'm all over the place here with creativity. So that was that. But then my most...
But what I love about it is that you are all over the place with it.
I really am. Like I'm all over the place. And like I love DIY stuff. Like for my for like a big party for like my older daughter, like a couple years ago, I made like all the centerpieces and all the stuff. And like, yes, it was also very cost effective, so there was that aspect of it too. But I love doing it. But most recently, and the biggest creative thing that has stuck the most is for the past 8 years, I've been writing. It started as like an idea in my head that just wouldn't go away. I was reading at the time a lot of romance novels, and it was all like, oh, let's like meet and fall in love and everything's amazing. And I kept on thinking like, but what about after the happily ever after, when you come to like real life and real stuff? And so I wrote a story on that. It was like a romantic suspense. It took me a really, really long time to even tell anyone that I was doing it. It was in my phone for months and months and months. And I think my kids at the time, they were like little. They were the first ones that I told, even probably before my husband even knew what I was doing, because they'd be watching TV and I'd be then sitting there typing and stuff like that. But I had a lot of encouragement from some other fellow authors that really helped me with that. And then I did a sequel to that. But then my kids they saw what I was doing, which was great because it really got them reading more and wanting to write more. So like it also really showed me how you are teaching your kids so many lessons just by trying to be who you are, and by showing, like by me doing that, obviously there's a lot of mom guilt that comes with that. It's like, I'm sitting here writing, letting my kids watch a movie instead of maybe interacting with them more or whatever, but they're learning a lot of lessons from that too, saying, you know what, like you can have a lot of aspects to your life, and if you have a dream, then you got to go for it, right? Or you can do anything. Like I can be a dentist and I can also be an author. I can use both sides. So they wanted to read something that I wrote, and those were not appropriate for them. So I said, "Oh, you know what? I'm going to write something. Okay, my next story, I'll make a story that you can read." I thought it was going to be just some short story, just something kind of like just for them quickly, just so that I can do something that. Anyways, this turned into like my new passion. It was a middle grade fantasy novel, and honestly, I love writing for that age. Like I don't know what it is. I just, you get it. Like it's so much fun, and I loved the kind of more fantasy part of it because you can really let your imagination go wild. You don't have to stick to what like real kind of world situations are. So that was really fun. And so a small little story turned into like, over 100,000 words of this thing that took like, sorry, I see someone in my front yard. What is going on there? Sorry, I'm sitting at a window and someone is plugging something in somewhere. Anyways.
Not the postman.
No. And I'm like, I'm totally sidetracking here and I don't want to be doing this, but it's a little bit crazy, like plugging something in on my side and walking across the street. Anyways, we'll just ignore that for now. Gosh. But
unless an explosion goes off, and then don't ignore it.
Exactly. We'll just cover our heads. But sorry, back to what I was saying was that it turned into this huge big story. So then I ended up splitting it into 2 books, and it was this whole thing. And like, it's just great. But the thing that I really have become really passionate about, and I'm sorry, your one question to me in the beginning has turned into this whole long-winded story, which usually happens when I get asked this question, is I've been doing a lot of visits to schools and talking to kids, especially once it became, even when it was just the other novel, it was more just about being an author and being a dentist and kind of showing you can have levels to your personality and things that you enjoy and all that type of stuff. But when I did the middle, it was just amazing. And like to watch the kids when they would come up to me afterwards and like tell me about all the stories they're writing and all, it was like, it made my heart so full. It was so amazing to see because like, you know, you lose that imagination in us, and that creativity unfortunately gets stifled like really too early. And it's just so important to who we are as individuals. And I love seeing them have it. And I really wanted to do something to help bring that out. And so, like even before that, the beta readers that I used for the middle grade novel, like that I did, were kids. Like I made a whole program and I created this whole program. Like I think there were about 17 of them from around the US and Canada. And, you know, I made this whole program to show them also to say, look, this is what it takes to get a book out. This is what you got to do. And also like when you're doing things in school and you have to keep on rewriting, like it's not just about, I mean, my kids a lot of the times are like, oh, you have an assignment, I'm going to write. Okay, I'm done. Goodbye. It's like, that's not the way it works. And so it was to kind of give them a little insight view also, but to show them how important their opinions are and how all of that. So it kind of started from there and then snowballed into wanting to do more for them. And one silver lining of the 12 weeks that I was not able to work during this COVID situation was it allowed me to create Wordsmithers Academy, which I would have had time to do otherwise. And I worked with like a bunch of groups of kids and been refining things along the way. And now I run workshops for kids, helping, you know, young writers become authors and walking them through all of that. And we actually also have another program through Wordsmithers Academy is I publish, like our first one just went out and I'd like it to be a biannual thing, an anthology of kids' stories. So they can really see the joy that you get. And like, look, you know, being an author is to see your work out in the world for others to enjoy. Like there's no joy like that. I mean, it's scary as hell because, you know, you're so vulnerable and you're putting it out there, but what an achievement it is to see all your hard work there out in the world for others to enjoy. And I wanted to be able to give that to these kids. So it was like this free program that we offered. And so this one that we just put out, it was published a couple weeks ago, free for everyone to enjoy. So really like go onto Amazon and grab it because these kids will love it and let them know what you think. But it's called Stories from Quarantine. And they're not necessarily about quarantine or anything like that, but it's just what their imagination during this time, what it came up with. So that's a really long-winded story about me. And
there's so much in there, and I want to unpack it all. I've got to start from the beginning, so I'm going to take you right back to the beginning of what you said and ask you some questions about that. So
let's do it.
Clear in my throat. Okay, so for me, as you were talking and you were speaking about the importance of honouring your creativity, it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm putting this out there to you, that because you started honouring wherever the creative urge sent you, like it sent you, you know, you made the bibs and it sent you to drawing the Bert and Ernie, and maybe because you followed that, is that why you perhaps ended up at writing? Like, in other words, you kind of just kept going with where it took you until you found something that felt like, okay, this I want to do for longer.
Maybe, yeah. I mean, like I remember I was talking about it with my mother actually the other day, how when I was younger, I used to write stories too. But I think that part of it is like what you're saying. It's kind of, it eventually took me there. And like I said, it took me a long time to even let anyone know what I was doing. Because you can, you know, make this little design bib or you can like draw or do this, but like writing is a big thing. And like, I was like, who was I to think that I can be an author? Like, I'm not trained in this. I'm a dentist. I'm not like, I never did any kind of creative writing courses. So I think that, yeah, like what you're saying is I never really thought about it that way, but I think that doing all these different creative things and seeing myself do it and follow through and accomplish it and do all of that almost gave me the confidence also to be like, you know what, like just go with what your heart is telling you and it'll be what it'll be. Because at the end of the day, and it's funny because everyone always says to me, like, where do you find the time? And like, how do you do this? It's like I said, there's no choice in the matter. It just kind of is. And so you let your heart take you where it wants to go, where it wants to go at that time.
So how long have you been, about 8 years, have you been writing particularly the middle grade books? Has that been an 8-year process?
No, I did the middle grade probably about 5 years. now. Now, like, see, this is my thing.
Terrific.
And this is the thing also about like being a dentist, being a mom, and doing all the things is that I wrote, like I said, that $100,000. Yeah, can you imagine? That'd be awesome if my book can do $100,000.
It'd be nice.
That was like
$100,000.
Okay, my 100,000 words book that I then realized after the fact, like I didn't know where it was going, that I can't publish a middle grade novel that long. I'm not like, not J.K. Rowling. Like, we're not doing this, especially in the beginning. So luckily it was written in 2 parts. So I kind of just split it in half. So the second half has been written for a very long time. It is still not published. So that's on my to-do list. And it's like, that's the thing. It's like,
so tell us the name of the first one. What is it called? Tell me it. What is it? Where do people find it? What is it called?
It's called Bailex, Bailex. And it's about a foster kid who kind of learns that he has something going on with him, like kind of magical powers, and his journey in figuring out what is going on with him and where it's going to take him and all of that. And so, and so basically it's like, I don't know if it's kind of like the curse of the multi-creative mind or passionate mind, is that, I was doing that. And then as I'm like, right before COVID happened, I was like kind of set to be like, okay, I was working on it. By June, I want to have it out. And then bam, like, I think I even did like in the end of February last year. So I guess almost like not so far from a year ago, I did a podcast and we were talking about that. And I was saying how, yes, okay, like it's going to be June. I'm saying it now to make it, to put me on a deadline type of thing. And then COVID happened. And then, and then the Wordsmithers Academy thing, it gave me this opportunity that I was just like, you know what, I'm never going to have another opportunity to do this. So things have been focusing a little bit differently. But yeah, so the middle grade stuff has been going on for a while. Like it took me probably about 3 years at least to write that whole thing. Like it takes time. But the thing is like, I'm doing this for me and the feelings that I get from writing and from being able to express myself this way, right? Like if I wanted to make being an author like more of a full-time thing or more of like a career, I would have to do it differently, obviously. But that's kind of what it's about. And when I talk to people about creative stuff, it's like really connecting with your why. Like you have to connect with your why and understand why this is important to you. Too often we have our why and then we end up getting so caught up in other people's stories in the same kind of world as us that are doing the same type of creative things. And then it kind of, it changes that vibe sometimes. So yeah, so eventually, hopefully, I don't know, maybe I should say now by June, I want to, it's a year later, I'm telling you, by June, I want to have the next one out that will get it going. But yeah, again, another one of my long-winded.
Keep her accountable, people. Yes. Start emailing her and saying like, have you done it?
There we go. So you're gonna have to do that. But yeah. So the middle grade stuff has been going on for a while, but it's kind of been the same story that's just been there. And I want to get writing more and doing more, but like I have a couple things now, and I decided at the beginning of this year, I'm like, okay, this is what I'm doing. These are the 3 things I want to do. So like I'm like going crazy now trying to finish up a revamp of the program to get out, and which should be out by the time this airs. It should be ready to go. So I'm really excited about that. And also obviously a new project, because why don't we need new projects all the time when I'm trying to get something else done, is I'm going to kind of start a blog called My Matcha Mornings, which basically talks about the creativity and kind of more so following your passions and how, following your passions, kind of cheesy, but like following your passions is the greatest gift you can give yourself. And really, especially as like a busy mother, like as a mom in general, like your wants and your needs usually fall to the side, and everyone else, you end up losing a lot of yourself if you don't really identify what makes you happy and the passions that you have. You don't want to lose that just because you have a big responsibility to other people. So it's a blog about that and all that kind of stuff and how to help people follow their passions and live their best lives. So
and I think it's really common, isn't it, for mums to, as we say mums, we say moms, which sounds way better, but for mums to make time for creativity. I hear this as a theme all the time, that actually that's sort of a doorway for mothers to get back into the world, even if they're working or not working. I mean, kids may not be the only thing they're doing. Don't forget, we've also often got husbands, or for those that don't or have wives, but for those that don't, like then they've got even more responsibility a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But it's that allowing and making time for that creativity to start to open you back up again and bring you back to life in a way that all those other things can't.
Exactly. Like giving you, and also it's a matter, I think, really of like giving yourself permission to do that. Like, it's okay. Like, you know, and like I said before, like your kids learn from you and like you want to teach them lessons. And I think it's really great lessons to show them that, you know, you have a passion for something, then follow it. Like, it's going to just encourage them to do the same for themselves. So I think it's like a little bit of a mindset shift that moms need to take sometimes in order to get over it. Like I said, I had huge mom guilt and all that kind of stuff when it came to this, but yeah, so that's...
Yeah, you'll never get it perfect anyway, because then if you gave them all your time and they turned out spoiled little brats, you'd be guilty about that. Exactly. And it never quite works. Besides, I say to my children all the time, look, I will admit the things I did and I will pay for the psychologist. It's fine.
I love that.
So it's all good. You need some problems, otherwise what's going on?
Exactly. And life's not exciting. Then you'll have nothing to write about in the future, right?
Exactly. Well, it's that ultimately in books, the process is there's a character who has some form of transformation, even if it's a subtle one. You know, in kids' books, doesn't have to be a huge one, but they are somewhat different at the end of the story than they were at the beginning. This is life, you know. Kids have to learn that too.
Yeah. That's very true.
What I love is that, like you've started your own journey of being creative, but then I can see this spark in you that says, you know, I found my buzz, but I want everybody else to find their, you know, spark too. So, like you said before, you even and there's nothing wrong with this. I think it's brilliant. Everyone's going to have a different way of doing it. Like some people may have established their own career first. You've started this thing and gone, oh my gosh, you know, kids should be doing this as well. And then you've gone and started this amazing academy to encourage kids. And to me, it almost looks like that you're growing with them at the same time. That is this beautiful journey you're taking with your students where, you know, you're not just sort of the master teaching down to them. You're a bit, you know, at one step ahead of them, but you're going on this beautiful journey together. Mm-hmm. So is that how it feels as you're doing it?
It does, because like, you know, with everything that you do, you grow, right? You grow as a person. You know, I've tried like a bunch of different things with this, like with everything, you know, like, oh, that didn't turn out how I wanted. Let me do this. And so 100% it's growth, and it's great. And they're teaching me so many things, and allowing me to connect with that, like that mind of your youth that we lose, right? So it's like that spark that they have that is amazing to see. And especially as they start getting older, like the programs are from kids ages like 9 to 17, generally around like, you know, it's like middle grade is more where it's kind of at there. And like, I'm even like thinking of my daughter right now, my oldest daughter is in grade 10, she's 15, and they have to start thinking about the courses that they're taking, they're going to be taking next year, because, you know, like some doors are going to be closing and some opening, like they have to start thinking about this. And it was crazy to think that, like at that age, how do you know? But even more so at that age, I think it's really important that they understand that just because, let's say for writing, right? Just because maybe you don't want to be an author or whatever, it doesn't mean, or maybe you love music, but you're not going to be a musician. It doesn't mean you shouldn't be playing the piano still or doing all these things. You should continue doing the things that bring you joy, because what your passions are is like your identity. It's who you are. And even though like whatever, let's say your job might be in the future or what have you, that part of you still exists and you can't ignore it. When you ignore it, like you do suffer. And I think I really think it's important to really try and encourage that in the kids, and seeing them do it, it just encourages you as well, and just you kind of feed off each other. So it's been really great. It really has.
That's such valuable advice that you just said there. I really took that to heart, even though I should know this already, but we know we're learning and being reminded of things all the time. That even if it isn't like going to be your job, you can still do your creative passions, a whole bunch of them actually, because I know one of the things that often pervades our thinking, you know, as a society is I'm going to do that job if I get famous or if it's successful or if it makes me money, or then I'm going to stop. If it doesn't do that, then why do it? And I hear that a lot, that people then quit certain things because it didn't, lead to that vision of societal success.
Exactly.
But
yeah.
if it leads to your happiness, then why let it go?
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And that's why it's like you have to connect with your why. Like, why do you love doing this? Right? Like for me, with the writing, and it's funny because I literally this was part of what I was talking about. Like I was just reviewing right before I got on here with you in my course with the kids, is that I talked about, like how there's like, this continuing of being a pantser or a planner and like this whole thing. And I was saying how I like to be in the middle. Like I think having a framework for me is important because it's allowed for like, just getting a little writing thing in here, but what I call focused creativity. So it's like you have an organization of your thoughts, but having a framework allows your writing to be more accelerated and allows when I'm actually writing to really just let my imagination run wild. And for me, like the most enjoyable part of writing is to know what I want to write, to know, okay, the purpose of this scene or this chapter is this is where the character is now, this is where I want him to be when we're done or whatever, and then to just write. And sometimes I don't even know what I'm going to write, and you just go and you just let the characters talk to you and that is what that is just so much fun to me. And you know what, at the end of the day, like, yeah, and when I put things out there, like I put it out, and you know what, if 4 people buy it, awesome. If a lot of people buy it, great. But I don't judge my success based on where it ranks on Amazon or anything like that, because that's not what it's about. It's about what it gives me. Now, yeah, obviously, don't get me wrong. Obviously, if it ranked really high, that would be awesome. But like I said before, it's important to connect with that why, because otherwise, like you end up needing other people's validation. Like you don't want to need other people's validation you don't want your creativity need. This is like a tongue twister for me, but I think you get where I'm going to.
You'll be patient till you get this right.
Yeah, okay, we're just going to try this again. So you don't want your creativity to be needed to be validated by someone else, because that's not what it's about. It's something about inside you, and don't look for other people to validate it, because then maybe you're not doing it for the right reasons, right? Like if you're just writing, I'm going to write a book because I want to become famous, okay, but like if that's the only reason why you're doing it, then you maybe probably shouldn't do it, because it's not easy to do that. Like you want to, they always talk about, it's about the journey and not just the destination. Like you need to fall in love with the process of what you're doing, because the process is going to take a lot longer than the actual result in the end. And things are going to change along the way. And so, you got to just connect to what's important to you. And it doesn't need to be something that, yeah, okay, well, if I can't be an author professionally and like quit my day job type of thing, then I'm not good at it. It's not worth it. You can't think like that, because then many people wouldn't write, because to be really successful as an author is not an easy thing. So, yeah. Another one of my long
really great advice. And I think there's a lot of people need to hear that, like I need to hear that all the time, because, in this day and age where we're all about likes and people's attention, and you put something out there, and I read an article that it's not even that you're necessarily doing it on purpose, but ever since they introduced the likes on Facebook, that's when people started unconsciously to seek that. And if they don't get it, even though they may not be about validation, they start becoming about validation. It starts going, oh, how come they didn't like that, but they like that? Did I do something wrong on that one? It could have just been the time of day that you posted it. But
exactly.
This sort of stuff does affect us in such a world where everything is so public. It's out there, and it will either be seen or ignored, or seen and not liked, or seen and loved. And we all want to be seen and loved. But you're right. What do we do the times where that doesn't happen? Do you find that in yourself or your students that there are particular like psychological like blocks or issues around creativity that seem to come up time and time again?
What do you mean by that? Sorry.
Like kids as they're writing worried about criticism or perfectionism, or What sort of things stop them from creating or become like a hindrance to the creative process, or in your own experience?
I think it might be sometimes, I think perfectionism is a big thing. And just like, I know even with one of my daughters, like when she writes, she's so like, it becomes, when she has the time to do it, I guess, when she's like a little bit more under a time stress, like then it almost forces her to do more. But I think that people sometimes they try, okay, let me make sure this exact sentence is perfect. And going over, it's kind of like when I do my workshops, I talk a lot about like, I call it the creative dump. I'm like, just take what's in your head and write it out. It's for yourself. It's for no one else. Just do it. Just let it come out. And then you go back after, it's the whole writing cycle, let's say with respect to writing. And so I think it's just, I think sometimes people get blocked on the imagination factor. It's like, just let your imagination go. It's not going to be perfect. And the thing is like, you might think it's supposed to go this way, but really it's supposed to go that way. And when you start thinking of one thing, by the time you're done, you'll be like, oh, wait a second, that is not even what I was thinking was going to happen. Or for example, when you're talking about being blocked, like even I talk a lot with them, and I find with myself too, like with respect to writer's block, like if there's a scene or something, or like when I was doing a framework I was doing like a short story I was writing with the kids, and I was blocked on like a certain, like, I talk about all these different points that you need to get through, like I call them the supports. And I couldn't get it. It was bothering me. Like, and I was stuck. And it was kind of like, then I'm kind of like, you know what, just forget it. Just stop and go another direction. Like sometimes we get too like focused on like, well, this is what I thought from the beginning, so this is how it has to be. And you kind of just got to take a step away and go another route. So I think sometimes that like for me and for some of the students also, you just get too locked in what your original first like, idea of how you thought something was going to be is, and they can't sometimes take a step back and then let their imagination go. And I think what I find not challenging, but I am very, very aware when I give feedback to kids is how I give them the feedback. If I was doing a workshop, let's say, which I do want to try and do in the future, this is another one of my things, called Wordsmithing Mamas. Just like for moms kind of like me, who just always had this story in their head, who want to write just because they want to write, not because you want to become some famous author or whatever, but just because you have this story inside you that you want to do and get your creativity out. But that's different. If you're giving feedback to like an adult, they understand how to take it, certain things. But with kids, you got to be really careful about how you offer the feedback, because you never want to do it in a way that's going to kind of hinder their imagination or let them think that what they did wasn't good. And so that's something that I am really careful with when we work together. And so I start trying to work with them with something and showing them the process. Okay, you're stuck here. You're not moving on. So maybe let's think, well, what if this happened? Or what if is the big question that we use all the time. Well, what if this or what if that? And so I think that it's kind of, people sometimes, especially with the kids, get locked into one idea and are sometimes scared to kind of move away and try something new, which is something that happens a lot just in life in general. So it's kind of a life lesson at the same time too, I guess, sometimes, that like sometimes you just got to try a different route and move on. But yeah.
Yeah, the feedback thing is so important. I think even though you said adults can take it, I see in Facebook groups all the time that many adults can't take it because they're quite
hard.
There's still
really, especially I think especially when it comes to your creativity, it is like, because you're so vulnerable putting that out there, right? And like even when my husband does a lot of the editing for me with my books, and he is like, there's like no filter. He is just goes, and I appreciate it because you want it before it's out in the world, right? And so there are times I am like in tears. I'm like, what do you mean you didn't think this was good? Like, it's so hard, right? But like, as an adult, you can also step back then and you can get over the tears, get over it, and realize that, you know what, maybe you're right. But with kids, especially because I'm trying to foster this in them, you got to make sure to frame things in the right way. And at the end of the day with kids, it's the process like I talked about, it's not the product, it's the process of using your imagination and your creativity and doing it. That is the most important part. And so with me, I want to make sure to continue to encourage and foster that.
Yeah, that's a really great highlight, that at the end of the day, even though there's all these things going on in a creative process, and particularly when it's, let's call it a professional process, because you are going to put that thing out into the world.
100%.
Even for kids, it's professional.
Oh, for sure.
The first one is to make sure that you're fostering your creativity, imagination, protecting that at all times,
I like that.
above all else, your process. So tell me about your process.
I like that protecting.
What is your process in, like, do you have a certain time that you make for creativity? Are you just spontaneous wherever it comes? How does it work for you?
So for me, like, I work 6 days a week. And so I really, I need to schedule, like I need to kind of schedule things, like, different things come to me in like the weirdest times. Like, I don't know what it is. And there is something with it, and I can't remember the explanation right now, but there's something about like when you're in the shower, and I guess a lot of other senses or ideas come to me. Like, I feel like I need like a whiteboard in the shower that I can just like write down. Cause like, I keep on having to repeat it in my head, like until I can get to a pen to write things down. Also, when I'm driving, I don't know if it's just kind of like a repetitive, there is a thing about it, and I can't remember. I think I even did a post about it on Instagram once, about how creativity, like in that type of thing. But for me, and like, honestly, if my 20-year-old self heard me say this, like, she would never believe it. I have become a morning person. I was never a morning person ever. When I had kids and I needed to wake up sometimes in the morning and be up at like, when they would be waking up in the 5s or the 6s, or like I remember telling my mom, like, I had to be up in like the 5s. It was crazy, or like the 6s. And so, but now it's like, I see, even on weekends, on Sundays, cause I work on Saturday half day, but like today my husband's like, okay, well, let's set an alarm for 8:30. So I set an alarm for 8:30, but like I was up at 7 just because I'm used to doing it. So like the mornings for me are huge. Like I love it because everything is quiet, nothing else is going on, and it's time for me. And I have kind of like a routine, like I'm getting into it. Like I love my green tea. Like I love tea. I'm not a coffee drinker at all. I love the way it smells, but I just don't like it. But I'm a tea drinker. I love to have, wake up and have my tea. That's why my blog's called My Morning Matcha. Green tea is my thing. Like the mornings are my time. I try and also, like I said about kind of the reason why I really need like a framework when I'm writing is because, like, if I'm at work and let's say I had a cancellation in the day or there's an opening or something, like I'll sometimes try and use that to get some stuff in, or like I really try and find like any spare moment to try and do things. But like my real creative, like me time is the mornings. That's when I'm most productive and, happy.
Yeah. So would you ever consider moving into creativity full-time as a job if it presented itself as that? Or do you love having the balance of your other job and then the creativity as a bit of a side hustle?
I do like having both. If I think like in an ideal world, if I could, be able to have more time for that, to kind of, now it's basically like 100% my work, like being a dentist, and the other stuff is like, just like I said, the couple hours in the morning, the little breaks I have during the day. I would love it if I could structure it in a way that it's kind of, like part-time dentist type of thing, and then the other part-time, be able to do both. And it would allow me also in, let's say, the dentist part of it, to do the procedures that I enjoy doing the most only. And, like it would be great to be able to do it that way. But again, like, I mean, you have a family, you have bills to pay, and like, it would be great if I could somehow, be able to put more time towards that. But it's just,
but you're getting so much done even without having any time hardly to put towards it. So I can only imagine what you would achieve if you suddenly had 50-50. Whoa.
Yeah.
Do you think that being a dentist has helped your creativity? Do you think there's creativity involved in even being that more,
A hundred
you know, I
percent.
mean, it's not necessarily left brain being a dentist. I'm sure it's very creative in
Yeah,
its
I
own
mean,
way,
a
but
hundred percent. Like it's funny, like when again, just back to the workshop things, I talk about how how as much as, let's say writing is just very creative and all that type of stuff. It is, but it's like, it's an art, but it is also a science. Like, so much research. It's like, there's a process, like you said before, that a story takes. There's a character here, there's something that happens, and then it becomes a goal and a journey. Like there's a process, and there's all the successful stories, and like there's so much reading and research I've done on this, and it's like all the successful stories follow the same kind of framework and the same pattern, and so there is a science to that. And so it's kind of both. And like with dentistry too, like yes, it's a science, but you know what, it is also an art, because you're talking about, there's so many aspects of dentistry, but like the part I like the most are people's smiles. And like, I mean, talk about creativity and an art. Like when I can give someone their smile back, or or give someone something, and it's just like, that is the greatest feeling in the world, in order to be able to give someone a smile and that they didn't have before. It changes you. Like as a person, it does. And like, years ago when we had a nanny, like, and my kids were younger, she'd come over and she would cover her mouth a lot whenever she would speak or smile. And then one day I'm like, you know what? You're coming with me to work. I brought her to work. I fixed up all her teeth, and like the smile she had after, like it was like her face lit up. She was a different person. And that is the most rewarding feeling as a dentist. And so there really is that dual, like I can see why, even though, it's in the, like, I was educated in the sciences and all that type of stuff, like the profession of being a dentist, there is a creativity to it, right? Like we're creating things, like even when you're doing a filling, like I have to, make that tooth now look like a tooth again with the filling material, like all that stuff. So there is a lot of that in there too, that why I love it, why I think also that's something that I wouldn't ever want to lose. But yeah, it kind of all, I guess it all kind of comes together in the end.
you're a sculptor.
Exactly.
I mean, really,
Look at that. I'm
it's
getting
true.
so dark in here. Sorry, the sun's starting to go down, and I'm like,
Because you're in nighttime
yeah,
and I'm in daytime.
that is
Because we're in opposite
true.
sides of
And
the
we are like
world. How cool is
we're
that?
even in different days right now. Like I'm in Sunday still, and you're in Monday, right?
Monday's going to be a really good day, Erin. I'm
Awesome.
telling you now.
I love that.
So tell me a little bit about your plans for the future. I can tell you're a big visioner, dreamer. Give me the big picture of where you would love to see your creativity going.
Well, my like, I guess 2021 goal, or my 2020, I just thought, like bullet journals, how everyone has these pretty journals. A lot of it is like with the book stuff, right? That's what got me going on it. They have these like the bookshelves, and they color in the books, and like I'm always like, I wanted to do that, but I can't. So I created. Of course I've created. I should go get it and show you. But like I'll show you later. We don't have to waste everyone else's time on this. But like it's so awesome. So I'm gonna do a book this year. And so my word of 2021 is persistence. It's like I have my goals, and I'm just gonna keep on going until we do it. And so basically, and then I also thought of kind of, let's say for this year, like kind of like mind, body, and self. That's how I like to kind of divide my life up, right? And so, with the mind and stuff like that, I've started making sure I do my gratitude every morning, and I started meditating, which has been amazing. And, body, like I've been this past week even, I've started doing yoga every morning, more so because I've been having a lot of shoulder problems because of work, like always being like this. And like, it's a real thing. So just to help with that, and just in general, like, trying to be active and work out and all that kind of like mind, body, and like self. It's like, I call it self because it's like, it's who you are, like I said before, about your passions and all that kind of stuff. And so what I want to do on that front is I want to be able to organize things so I can get all my Wordsmithers Academy stuff together and just try and find however I can to put it out into the world and make it available to more people. And then I want to do the blog just because I love that. Like I love just being able to write and to share my experiences and to help try and encourage others to follow their passions too. So that's what like the blog is going to be for. And then kind of trying to organize it like that and give myself more time to write. Because really over the past year, like I said, I haven't had that and I am craving it. And so, I mean, it might not be a big, lofty, long-time goal, but like this year, those are my big goals, is to get the Wordsmithers Academy kind of ready to go and do whatever I can to get it into the hands of as many young kids that would appreciate it and learn from it, and then share my experience of being a creative and following my passions and stuff with others to help inspire others to do the same. And then just give myself that time to write more, which is what I really do miss, if I'm going to be honest.
Well, definitely, I tick you off as a creative genius at play. Tick, tick, tick.
Thank you.
Now let's check the tagline. Discover your creative confidence. You've given us so many tips on that today, and I think you're well on the way to discovering yours. Innovating in style. Look, I can tell you have your own style, and you're extremely innovative, coming up with your own whole fantasy novels, and also the Wordsmithers Academy. Amazing. And making art that matters. Everything I hear you say is it matters to you, it matters to the world, and it so does. I think that's really shone through from talking to you today, that you are so of service to others while also honouring yourself in the process and being of service to yourself. And playing, oh my goodness, you're all about enjoying the process, which, you've said so many times. I think those kids are so lucky to have a teacher like you.
Well, thank you.
I really can't wait to look more into your program and help it spread across the world, get those kids writing,
thank you.
and get the kids in all of us to write again, So I think you're very inspirational and super encouraging. There's some amazing gems in what we spoke about today. Is there something, parting words, that you would like to say to all the creatives out there who might be struggling or wondering if it's even worth making the time for them to be creative?
I think you kind of just said it right there, that it's about falling in love with the process, and it's being creative and finding the time for it or anything like that. It's not always easy, but it's always worth it. And so if it's something that is a passion of yours, and that is really, something that makes your heart feel happy and full, it's always worth it. You just have to remember why you want to do it.
Yeah. So finish us off on, are you allowed to say, what is your why?
Well, my why in general, I guess, it kind of goes back to the beginning with what we spoke about with that quote is, unused creativity is not benign. And it's just the joy that I feel inside and the happiness that it gives me when I'm able to do these things is what propels me to go forward with it every day. Because you have to do what means something to you and give what matters to you in life to have a kind of life that you're happy living.
Beautiful. You've brought us back full circle. Unused creativity is not benign. I will write that quote up somewhere. It's very, very, very powerful and a wonderful
Brené Brown
reminder.
has a lot of those.
Yeah. So thank you so much. It's been such a joy talking to you.
Too.
Now, all the links to find Erin will be in the show notes, so check all those out. So you can, we'll have them to the book. I'll have links to Wordsmithers Academy and anything else. I'm sure you're going to give me like 50,000 links and all your future projects and the blogs. We mustn't forget those, because it's amazing. And I'll even put a link to your dentist practice, because you never know. You do want to go to a creative dentist, people, someone that can give you a great smile. Why not? I think that's still part of your creative journey, so it's definitely relevant. Well done. You are an inspiration to us all, juggling so many areas of your life. Not to forget, of course, how much creativity it takes to be a mother these days. So thanks again so much for being on the show, Erin.
Thank you so much for having me.
Did you find that interview valuable? Great! Now be an awesome human and go and leave a review, because it helps the podcast out so much. Want to read the show notes? Check out the children'sbookauthorpodcast.com. Want to find out more about me, Eleanor Page? Find me at eleanorpage.com or come and say hello on social at Eleanor Page Books. Until next time, keep writing and keep learning.